Hi, everybody. It's Anna. So I did give a little bit of a notice an hour ago that I was going live right now. So if anybody shows up, that'll be great. I just had a thought of something I wanted to share. It came up for me yesterday, but it wasn't exactly a Sunday musing. So I didn't post it yesterday. But I was thinking about how so much of our conversation around the spiritual journey, or a good portion of it, ends up kind of circles around healing, right? And releasing barriers and removing barriers to what we're trying to do. And most of my clients come because they have hit some kind of barrier, like they feel called to do something, but they can't seem to get they can't seem to get themselves past something. So they're almost like they're stuck. They're kind of spinning their wheels. They're getting frustrated. They feel like they're trapped, right? And that's a lot of people's experience. A lot of people experience that feeling of being trapped, and they can feel energetically that they want to get on the other side of this, but they don't know how to do it. So, hi, Moon Woman. I'm glad you're from Louisiana. Thanks for joining me. So we're aware that something's got us blocked, right? And so people think, and there's so much conversation around healing. Healing is very important, but it's also crazy easy. Okay. So that's probably that you wouldn't get that impression from how it is talked about because there's so much conversation about healing and healing and healing. Well, I think there is, okay, the model that most of us have seen with healing is therapy, like talk healing. And that is a linear model, right? And that actually, it seems like that requires like a mental working out of trauma or revisiting old stories. And so, and the idea behind that is that if your mind can figure this out, you can be healed. Although I have heard different theories around that, like you don't get healed, you just get better at coping. There's lots of things about this. Okay. So, but that does require like an ongoing sort of journey where you're telling the story, you're repeating the story, so from that description you might think, okay, healing is a long process, a lifelong process. And it may be in the case of linear thinkers. In my experience with heart and body people, who are the people I usually work with, healing is just a matter of like energetically finding the spot that needs healing and offering it healing, offering it love and support, right? So the healing itself is not complicated or difficult. It really is a miraculous experience of grace, and it never doesn't work. In my experience, it never doesn't work. That means it always works. It's cleaner to say it always works, right? That is not where the challenge comes from. The challenge comes from building up to your willingness to be healed and what you do after you are healed. So the build up to being healed, what that is that before you're willing to sort of let yourself be miraculously healed, you try to solve it. And that actually is kind of a linear process. The mind will try different things, right? The mind may try therapy, may try changing jobs a few times, may try changing relationships or changing what you eat. There's all kinds of strategies the mind will come up with. And the mind will run through these strategies really until it kind of gives up. Basically, the mind will run itself until it sort of subscribes to the idea that it doesn't know what to do next. It's kind of hopeless. So by the time my clients come to me, I always say my clients are not lazy. They have done everything they could think of to get free. And I'm like their last resort. And finally, their mind goes, you know what? I have no idea what to do next. I'm completely exhausted. I'm just going to have to do something crazy and ask for help from somebody else. And so when they come to me, their minds are usually quite defeated. It's a good place for your mind to be in, because when your mind is defeated, it stops fighting and it relaxes because it doesn't have a choice. And then you can access something else. And that actually is the process I do with my clients, is like accessing your own inner divinity, which is, I call it the soul, right? So when you access the soul, you're actually opening up this portal between yourself and the universe, right? Which is always accessible to you. It's just that until this moment where the mind finally gave up, you were busy doing this other thing. So you didn't come to that yet, right? Okay, so there is kind of a surrender that's what it is. The mind comes to a point of surrender and it allows itself to sort of be guided into something new. Now, when the mind surrenders and you're able to access this universal power, that's when healing is accessible and it can happen within a few minutes. It's very quick, it's very easy. But what happens after the healing is what actually is where kind of the rubber hits the road. This is where the challenge, I think, the larger challenge occurs. Well, the first part of the journey is pretty challenging as well. But now it's like, okay, the roadblock's been removed. Now it's time for you to walk on that road. But we've been stuck on this side of that road for a long, long time. Okay. Or we've been cramped up for a long, long time. You think about like being in a confined space, right? And finally someone opens the door. But your body is sort of morphed into this shape that you don't really have a ton of movement yet. So we might expect, because we're so frustrated on this side of the healing, oh, if I could just get to the other side, oh, I want to run, run, run so hard. We think the second we are healed, we're going to just take off running because we're so restless. Now, that might happen for some people, but that's not usually what happens. What usually happens is you go, "Oh, the barrier's removed. I'm not sure how to proceed now because I've been on this side of it for so long. I've been in the cage for so long. So the cage door is open, but now you have to kind of build up your confidence and your faith in yourself to try that new world." And so I think that's where people get disappointed in themselves because and also they might give up there. Like I have clients who I've worked with them once, maybe. I have one client who I think is ghosting me for this week, who I worked with her and we did a healing, but then she ghosted me. She hasn't been back with me. And I think it's because it's not that the healing didn't work, because I know the healing worked, but she's not ready. She wasn't ready for the life that would happen on the other side of the healing. And by the way, none of us are. So it's not about being ready for that other life. It's about, can you stay in that place of discomfort while you stretch into it, right? Hi, Jennifer and Bonzo and Jennifer. That's where you're at right now. You're Jennifer. You're at the point of having received the healing, or you've already been healed, or you can let me know. If you are not ready, are you really healed? Yes, you are really healed. You're just not strong yet. Okay, you're just not ready. So it's like the barrier's moved. You just have to now start stretching your limbs, right? You've been cramped up. You got to start wiggle your toes. Start by wiggling your toes. Then wiggle your ankles. There's this idea of like there is a whole process to kind of stepping into your power. You've been in a weakened state for a while, or you've been frustrated, you've been cramped for a while. So it really is like just be loving and patient with yourself, right? So some of my I've had clients I've worked with monthly for years now. And the truth is what those are, I mean, they obviously they get support all the time. So like when they do get stuck, I encourage them, we talk it through and they keep stretching, right? So it's about sort of expanding into the new world. So you're not going to suddenly go punk and you're there, right? We just have this weird idea. I think we have this weird idea. It comes from like the world of manifestation, I think, and also from maybe Disney, because we have this idea that magic works by, oh, I say the thing and I click my fingers, or Bewitched. Remember the show Bewitched? I wiggle my nose or whatever, and I am there. That is not how magic works in the physical world. There is magic in the physical world, but it works in degrees. It works by it works by expansion, right? So we have, and that's what you have to learn. You learn because you try to expand too quickly, or you jump ahead of steps and then you have to start over. There's lots of things you learn when you're younger, but when you get to a point where you're ready to do the actual growth of, and the actual expansion of magic, you have to take it by degrees. And so, but a lot of times, like what you said, Monzo, that actually does get people tripped up, because we'll do the healing, they'll experience it, but then they don't move forward, and they can trick themselves. It's like the door is open, but they don't step out of the door. It's still open. But instead of saying, oh, I'm just not ready to step through that door, they go, oh, well, the door must be closed, even though it's not closed. So I've seen people sort of convince themselves that they were stuck when they were stuck, but they weren't. They were stuck because they They didn't quite, they needed support in kind of finishing the expansion, if that makes sense. So Jennifer says, I'm at the point of integrating the healing. Yes, this is where the hardest work happens. Not the hardest work maybe, but this is where you'll get discouraged, right? Because this is where the miraculous thing happened, and then you go back to work. So the miracle is this, miracles are things that you can't explain how they work, right? It's the inbreaking of spirit, it's the inbreaking of the universe. It's very cool, it's very exciting, but you know what? You still live on the physical plane. You still gotta be on the physical plane. So the key, the challenge is learning how to be in the physical plane while you're accessing this energy. So you're still engaged, you're still going through the process, you're still stretching as you need to, you're still being very loving and patient with yourself. If you can't take a step right now, you're like, that's okay, we're getting stronger, we're getting stronger. If you think about like a 2-year-old, or not a 2-year-old, younger than that, like a baby learning how to walk, they're learning a skill, they're gaining strength, right? Well, you don't tell the little baby their first few steps, gosh, if only you could run a mile. Why are you so slow? We understand the developmental process of learning how to walk, how to get strong, how to build up your cardio. There's a whole process to growing, and it is quite magical. It's magical and it is physical. And so we get so hard on ourselves because we think we're supposed to go so much faster than we can go, when really we are integrating spirit and physicality at the same moment. That's really, really challenging. And the fact that we're doing it at all is a miracle, right? And so it might take a while to letting these things sort of integrate, letting the energy flow, letting it recede, all that patience comes from, really, it comes from, I think, having your soul, which I talked about earlier. That's the connection to the universe, really kind of cheering you on and reassuring you everything's fine. When I was writing my book, well, I thought about it for a long time before I started anything on it. Like, I thought about it, then slowly, like, little pieces would come in, like, oh, I'm going to do it on this. Oh, and then finally I said, okay, it's time to write the book, or at least to start it. And so I told my husband, I'm going to go get an Airbnb for a week. I'm going to go and write. It was the third day before I started writing. I got into this place. I sat, I goofed off. I watched TV. I don't even know what I did for 2 days. But I was sitting there, okay, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for something in me to shift, right? And it took 2 days of me just chilling and waiting until it arose in me. And then when it arose in me, then the actual structure of how I was going to write, that surfaced. But I wrote maybe 4 or 5 chapters there, right? I didn't finish the book, right? But I did. But I feel like there is something about, like, trusting. There's a purpose. There's a need to stretch before you start the marathon, right? And I think that that's what we don't. And in the linear world, we are faced with a world that does like 9 to 5 work, like 40 hours a week, or very regular work. So the idea is that we're supposed to function like that. Now, if you're in the linear world and you're working a job where you're functioning inside of a structure and you're given tasks and you're given, things to do, then yeah, of course you can do it for that length of time. You're not evoking a structure. You're not really evoking magic. You're walking inside of a structure that already exists. And so we try to take that structure and put it on this. And this doesn't work that way. This is not how innovative, creative, expansive magic works. You have to give yourself a chance you have to, like, breathe deeply and let your lungs get good at breathing. You have to get, even if you've been out of the sun, you have to slowly introduce yourself to the sun. If you've been in the dark for a while, you don't run out in the sun when you've been in the dark for a year. You first just stick your toe in the sun. Then you move your foot into the sun. You do it nice and slow and gently, because that's the way, because that's recognizing that we've been living in limitation. And now we are gently challenging the limitation. If you do it too fast, it's violent, and you will have some kind of reaction. You will get sick, you will get hurt, and you may go running back to where you were, because if the reaction is bad enough. So I'm looking at the rest. I haven't checked on you guys for a while. Jennifer, I'm a bit impatient. Absolutely. Totally. I get that. So part of the challenge, and I think this is what I do this with my mind a lot, is the impatience is actually kind of hiding a fear of scarcity. Like, I'm going to miss my chance, right? So what I try to do when my mind's impatient is saying, we've got this. Everything's working out. Everything's going to be fine. And actually, if you look at patterns in the past, most of us can see this pattern. Like, you don't move, you don't move, you don't move, you move a ton in a very short period of time. And that short period of time where you're active, you're really freaking productive, right? That is actually the way most creatives work. So I wrote like 4 chapters that week. Okay. Didn't write again for months, right? And then one day I saw that 11/11 was coming up on the calendar. And it was maybe 2 weeks from that date. And I thought, all right, I'm going to write this book and publish it in 2 weeks. And I spent 2 weeks writing all the rest of the paragraphs, getting it all formatted and getting it uploaded. So there's something about you're waiting for that moment where you're like, I'm ready. I'm stretched out, feeling good, oxygen flowing, blood's pumping. Now I'm going to go. Now I could have forced myself to write for for every day for a few months. Well, I could have tried. It would have been bad. And I learned that actually when I was a pastor, when I was preaching, right? I'm going off on this tangent, but I was preaching and I always wrote my sermons. Like, I wrote them all out. Like, I had full scripts, right? Well, then one Sunday I woke up and I was going to print out my sermon, and it didn't print. So I didn't have my sermon. So I had to just make up on the fly a outline, and I preached from the outline. And from that moment on, I never wrote another sermon. I'd get up because from that, my process changed. And from that moment on, every Sunday morning, I would get up, I would think about what I was going to write, and then I would create some kind of outline, and that's what I took with me. And my preaching got a lot better because I wasn't working on being perfect. I wasn't putting a lot of energy and struggle into something. I was sort of in the moment. And in the middle of preaching, something would occur to me that I didn't think of, and I would slide into that. There was a lot of, and I feel like the response people gave me was a lot better. Even though my former sermons were perfect, really well thought out and really well organized and everything, the magic was missing, right? So there is something about trusting your own magic. And when you get impatient, just speaking that truth to yourself, we're going to trust this. We're going to let it. Because actually, what is surfacing when your magic happens is the intuition. And the intuition has its own timing. It's doing its own thing. And suddenly it's like, yes, I want to play, and it'll play. And the mind's job is to wait until that happens. So I hear you about being impatient. Totally. Bonzo, I prefer I dream a genie. Yes. All of those are really good, right? Yeah, it'd be fun if that was how things worked. But also it's kind of cheating, right? Because if you never have to learn, like Jennifer is saying, you never have to learn how to cultivate your real magic. Real magic comes from functionally changing the world around you. It's not just materializing things, but like functionally changing the world. So it's creating something new because of the way you're cultivating it. There's something really cool about that. Let's see. How does one stay consistent with the integration? I think that's Shy Crane. I'm sorry, I'm not saying it right. I think it's about being kind. To me, being kind and patient with yourself is the key to everything. So if you start getting angry with yourself, and that's the correction. That's the mind usually getting frustrated. The soul's job is to help the mind stay calm, to help it feel supported, to let it talk it out. That it's actually a relationship that is developed where the soul attends to the mind. And when the mind gets nervous or worried, it attends to it. If the mind can stay calm, and you can help it stay calm, the intuition will easily flow. The intuition's not usually, I've never seen that's where the problem is. There are times where the intuition can have problems, but mainly the challenge is the mind overworking what's happening. Like, why are we moving faster? What's wrong with this? There must be another wound. Where did we get wrong? That happens a lot. Someone will clear something and they'll come back and say, I must be blocked again. And as we talk, they're not blocked. They just need help and like their mind calming down. So the flow the mind's just interrupting the flow. That's what's happening. If you can keep the mind calm and help it learn to follow the intuition, the mind will stop interfering with the flow. And then it actually stops interfering, and then it becomes supportive of the flow. So there's like a process to this, right? So it can cause a sort of trauma response when you finally get through what you've worked so hard to accomplish. Well, it possibly can. I mean, especially if you think of the major transition that's happening. Like the mind gets scared. Sure. I mean, I don't know. It depends how you define trauma. I mean, I don't think it's the mind doesn't know what to do with what happens next. Trauma can actually be like trauma actually pulls energy out. It like captures energy and traps it, right? So you don't have access to parts of yourself or parts of your energy. I think that when you heal something, energy is released, but now you have to do something with it. And I think that unknown factor can be very scary to the mind. And it can also show you if there may be other, like if the mind goes, uh-oh, new energy flowing in, that can be a bad thing. The mind may have a memory or some other response that's connected to what happens when memory goes into flow. So you may have to do accessory healing. That can happen for sure. But what you healed is solved. That's my experience. What you healed is solved, and you will go on finding places that need healing throughout your spiritual journey. There are deeper levels of healing. There's different, but I think if we say that healing's very, very difficult and it's inconsistent and it doesn't work, that's a mindset that kind of that mindset is not helpful to my work, right? Because my work is about getting that stuff cleared and getting in flow. So to me, I want to encourage the mind to realize we may still get stuck, but it's a different problem. Like we're good at solving problems. We're always integrating and solving problems. So the mind begins to be very hopeful and positive and recognizes that it has in its corner the soul who has miraculous capacity to heal and clear things. So it is about helping the mind live in faith. Even if it doesn't know what we're doing, it has a friend in the soul who does know what we're doing and can solve any problem. So to me, there is something very intentional about the way I interact with healing and the purpose of healing, because I want it to the story I tell is a very hopeful one that keeps the mind kind of excited and curious and interested and not feeling fearful or hopeless, if that makes sense. So the mind's tools are very important. If it has tools that are sort of demoralizing and feel kind of hopeless and frustrating, then it will struggle more to function well with magic. So um yeah, lots of practice. That's right. So Kim said, I find when I wait for the right time, I get a much better result. Absolutely. Absolutely true. It's so true. So that's what you have to remind them. I remember if we try to do it now, there's a wonderful book that I talk about all the time, which is called Choosing Easy World, and it's on Amazon. It's called Choosing Easy World. And it's about a woman who decides that she does an experiment where she's only going to do things that feel easy. That's her job, right? So she does an experiment. She writes about it. I think it's a fun book. But basically, she has a little mantra where she says, "I choose to live an easy world where everything is easy." And so anytime she's going to do something, this was just her practice. She would say, does this feel easy? Does this feel hard? So if it felt like a struggle, then her theory was, well, if it feels hard, then I'm not in flow with the universe right now. Because when you're in flow with the universe, it feels easy. So if I do it now, I'll be out of flow with the universe, which will cause and I'll lose more energy and I'll have worse results. So instead of doing that, I'm going to wait for things to be easy. So her book is kind of her sharing about what that was for. So I just thought it was a great book, and it was kind of fun and interesting. And there were lots of little places where she waited on something and then the result was something much better, right? So what you're saying is that if you wait for the right moment where you can feel yourself like, yes, I'm going, then you get it faster, quicker, and better. Absolutely. Um, yeah. So kindness is something. Kim says, unknown frightens me very much. Yeah. Well, the mind's always afraid, right? The mind's always afraid of the unknown because it doesn't know. And also because the mind has been told by the world around it that it's supposed to know, right? The mind's supposed to be the leader. So if the mind is feeling that's quite overwhelming, right? The mind's like, okay, that's pretty scary. I'm supposed to be leading. It's my job to figure this out. I don't know how to figure this out. It's overwhelming. If you shift it though, which is what I do with my clients, right? If you shift it into, oh no, mind, you're not in charge. You're not in the lead. The soul's in the lead. You're supporting the soul, and the intuition's the genius. So the intuition is going to be the one that kind of evokes the plan and going to give you some action steps. Your job is to just kind of follow through. Your job is to, go build the website or to write the book or whatever the thing is. The mind becomes a supportive energy to the intuition. So the mind saying, well, I don't know where we're going, then that's perfectly reasonable because the mind's not the navigator. And when you take that off the mind's plate and it learns to trust the soul, that this is all about relationship building, internal relationship building. When the mind learns to trust the soul, then it's like, well, I don't know where we're going, but I have the soul here, and the soul can heal stuff and remove stuff and has access to like all of this wisdom and genius. So like what's the bad thing that can happen that we can't handle together? The mind becomes confident that it has resources available. It's not on its own and it's not in the lead. It's part of a team, and the team is this genius intuition and this powerful soul. So then the mind starts relaxing into its role in the team. That's just kind of that's the tool I use with my clients. So I think that helps a lot when the mind is taken out of the burden of having to decide things based on logic or expectations or data, because that's the way linear people work. Our minds are trying to do the same thing, but for us, it doesn't work. And so the mind's kind of constantly trying something that doesn't match. And so it's almost like it's always failing, which is just very frustrating and confusing. But if you show the mind the other way of doing things, which is the way we're built to do things, then the mind finds its rightful place and feels at home. So yes, Jennifer, I need to hear this. Well, good. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, Kim, if the books, yeah, I don't know if it's in the library, but you can definitely look for it. It's like on, I think it's on Kindle. There's probably other books, but it's not a very expensive book. It's like $5 or something. So it's not expensive, but yeah, definitely you can find it in the library. Choosing Easy World. Oh gosh, who wrote it? Well, if you search it, you'll find it. Choosing Easy World. It's really great. So yeah. So Jennifer, I tend to be very much in my mind. Yeah. So yeah, that's most of us are there. And usually it gets worse. The mind becomes more obviously a challenge when you're ready to go into a new place of intuition, because the mind is now getting quite lost. Like when the intuition really starts getting to flow, the mind's like, what are we doing? And so that's just when my clients come to me, right? They're like, okay, my mind is really kind of panicking here. The mind's really getting stuck. And if the mind is stuck, we do get stuck because the mind is our agent on the physical plane, right? So that's when we really do get stuck, is the mind truly is stuck for some reason. And so the challenge is, the invitation is for us to solve it, to solve the problem for the mind, to like renegotiate what the mind's role is, and to help and heal anything that's in the way, to release old mindset. So the mind gets more and more comfortable and more confident to walk in faith. We are asking the mind to walk in faith, which means we're asking it to walk in a place it's never been and to engage things it's never seen. Walking in faith is believing in something you don't see. We're asking the mind to have faith in the soul. And the mind's not going to do that if it's in terrible pain, if it doesn't have a relationship with the soul, and if it's surrounded by terror, right? It needs another way of orienting itself. And it's our job to give the mind the orientation that helps it do its job the way it was built to do its job. So Tron said, I was telling my spirit guides how my mind is pulling me away from them, but my heart is fully invested. Yeah. So the mind usually is pulling us away just because it's clueless. It's because the mind doesn't know it. It's the mind and intuition don't speak the same language, and sometimes they have almost little knowledge of each other. So the mind's just trying faithfully to do its job according to what other people think it should be doing, and the advice and the data it's picking up. So we need the mind to stop orient. We have to give the mind that support. It doesn't know until we teach it, right? So the mind thinks that's what its job is. And we have to say, oh, no, the authority isn't out there. It's in here. And then help the mind orient to that. The mind is never it's never trying to work against us. If it seems to be working against us, it's because there's an actual block or a pain point that has to be solved, or it's confused. Most of the time, that the main problem is the mind is confused. It's gotten this message from the world. There's another message happening here, and this message it hasn't received yet. So anyway, Jennifer, I feel a bit lost. I feel lost all the time. I mean, I was telling someone this morning, I told a client one time, I was talking about helping your mind, get clear. And she said, well, it's easy for you because you're just really successful. And I'm like, it only seems easy when I'm talking, because when I'm talking, I'm like, yeah, everything's cool. Like I told a client this morning, I said, literally at least once a day, often more than that. My mind's like, oh my gosh, we are making such a mess of things. I'm so worried. And I have to kind of take care of my mind. So it is an ongoing challenge. You don't solve this one. until you jump off the planet. So it's a lifestyle where you're just being very attentive and loving to your mind all the time. You get so good at being patient and kind with your mind the more you do it. And patience and kindness, that's the language of magic. That's the language and play. Those are the language, that's the language of the universe. And so, like, the more you speak that language to your mind and help your mind relax and move into hope, the more magic you're bringing into the world. And by the way, that also translates into other people, into how you can interact with other people, because you're getting so good at being loving. And it doesn't end ever. This is not a piece of work that you've crossed the finish line on. I mean, there are projects you finish on, like you finish the book, you finish the piece of art, you finish this, yes, there are pieces you finish, but this is a way of life. It's actually a discipline for life where you are always committed to your beloved, and your beloved is you, these pieces of you that need constant and unconditional love. So it's more of a way of life than it is a problem solving strategy, or really anything else. It starts off as problem solving usually, but if you do it long enough, it becomes the way you orient everything, which is kind of the path I'm on right now. So anyway, all right. Um, Becoming more comfortable in the unknown and trusting intuition. And absolutely, yes, that's right. The unknown is expansion. Always happens in the unknown, because expansion is creation, and creation hasn't happened yet, so it's unknown. I mean, yeah, that's what it looks like. So it's never known until you see it, and then you go, oh, now I get to know, and I'm getting to know the thing, right? That's the whole journey. So and most people, I'd say most people are not doing that work. That's fine. There's lots of good work for us to do on the planet, but most people are not stepping into, they are functioning inside a system that already exists. And they don't know what you're describing. When you're talking about this, they don't know what you're talking about. I was raised by linear people. I'm married to a linear person. I have lots of linear people around me. They don't know what the heck I'm talking about. That's okay, right? It's because they're not here to do the work I'm here to do. And engage in the unknown, you have to get, I would say, comfortable. You do have to get comfortable. You have to get familiar with it. How about that? I think the mind's never quite comfortable with it, but we get the mind familiar with it, and the mind learns through patterns. The more often you do this, the more the mind does gain confidence. My mind right now is kind of grumpy a good portion of the time, but it's like, well, I guess we'll figure it out. Because at this point, my mind's like, we'll figure it out. I mean, it doesn't like not knowing. It doesn't like the confusion. It doesn't like, kind of the imprecision of how things work. But it still kind of does believe we're going to figure it out eventually. So it doesn't put up that much of a fuss, right? So the mind gets better at this the longer you do it. So, okay. So anyway, I want to clone you. Well, let me just tell you something. People have told me before, they should teach this in high school. This is not something, this is just, like, my clients are usually, well, I do have some younger clients. They're doing different kind of work, but a lot of us at this point, oh gosh, I don't know if it went away. Most of us at this point are, most of us have to live a while before this makes sense. I do talk to my kids about this, but I can tell it's sinking in, in a middling way, right? That's okay, because it's magical anyway. So I think, like, I think actually school is the place where you learn how to function in structure, and that is important, right? But at some point you're like, yeah, but I'm not built to do this with my real life. This is you have to learn how to function. Your mind has to learn how to pay bills, how to drive a car, how to navigate the world, how to have a job. And then you're able to go, well, that's survival for us. We're ready to thrive. And that's the shift. That's the shift where you kind of, now the mind and intuition are fully functional. They're going to come together and start something new. And that's where the magic happens. So, well, I'm going to close for now because I have a client coming up in a little bit, but I'm glad you guys joined me. I did want to jump on and kind of talk about this a little bit, and I'm glad you offered your insight, and I'll be with you another time. Have a great afternoon. Bye. Oh, it's hot in here.